Thank you, Senator Daines, a very kind introduction, and Ryan certainly sends his warm regards. You know, I have worked for ConocoPhillips around the world for about 28 years. I'm here in the US permanently now, and I'm very privileged to be here. And I appreciate your remarks, Senator Cruz, in terms of making me feel very welcome here. You know, it is an incredible time we're in, you know, to be part of this US energy renaissance. I'd also like to thank you and your colleagues here, Senator, in the Western Caucasus for your critical leadership. You've been essential in expanding access to our abundant, affordable and reliable resource endowment. And that's helped return America to global energy leadership. On behalf of ConocoPhillips, we appreciate this opportunity to discuss our energy's future. As the world's largest independent E&P company, with long-term development underway here in the lower 48 and also in Alaska, we are a big part of that future. Now, I'll share with you this morning our insights into the market, the shale revolution, infrastructure bottlenecks, climate and environmental protection, and of course regulations. I'll hit on many themes we've already heard this morning. Now, I will be making some forward-looking statements. This is a reminder that actual results could differ materially, as detailed in our SEC filings. I have to say that. So thank you for that. So, starting with the global market, you know, we anticipate ongoing energy demand growth. The world will add 2 billion people by 2040, and they'll all want energy, and they'll be increasingly able to pay for it, with 3% plus annual global economic growth expected. Up to 60% of this demand growth will come from Asia and the non-OECD countries. And as part of this, both oil and natural gas consumption will grow through at least 2030. Oil for vehicle fuel and petrochemicals, and natural gas for power and heating. Now, we hear, of course, a lot about potentially disruptive technologies, wind, solar, electric vehicles, but transitions take a very long time. Consider that in use worldwide today, there are 1.1 billion cars and 350 million commercial vehicles, both growing fast. Of these, only 2 million are electric vehicles. That's less than 0.2%. So a rapid fleet turnover in this massive scale that would be needed is really unlikely, and certainly a long way in the future. Now, fortunately for this demand scenario, there's plenty of oil supply. We are nowhere near peak oil. It's moved out to the 2040s and probably beyond. And that's thanks to the rise of North American shale resources. There's also no shortage of viable oil and natural gas development projects worldwide. And we're seeing production rise even despite today's lower commodity prices, which are well below previous peaks. Advancing technology is improving resource recoveries and still lowering costs. Also, America's shale, our bright new energy star, is not unique. The Energy Information Administration has identified dozens of potentially productive basins around the world. So the shale revolution will spread. But other countries often have crucial disadvantages, and we've heard some of those this morning. Unfavorable energy and tax policies, permitting and regulatory obstacles, or immature markets in infrastructure. And the US resolved these issues largely long ago. And of course, private mineral ownership gives landowners here incentives for development. And that's very often not the case elsewhere. So you sum this all up, and the US has a huge advantage for now. The natural gas outlook is similar. World potential is enormous. And there's an international trade in liquefied natural gas, LNG. Our company helped pioneer this technology in the 1960s. So now gas can reach consumers almost anywhere in the world. But there are still potential risks to the world energy market. With more oil and gas crossing international borders, the biggest risk is a trade war. That would depress economic growth as well as energy demand. Other risks include Brexit. This is meant to be Brexit Day, and we have even uncertainty on that. Iran sanctions and the Venezuela situation. Uncertainties like these can discourage investment, and geopolitical surprises can, of course, cause price spikes. At ConocoPhillips, we take a long-term view, and we've worked very hard to prepare our company to manage and thrive through inevitable price cycles. So how on earth did the US go from shortage to abundance in just 10 years' time? Good old-fashioned American ingenuity and technology. They produced the shale revolution, and it has been truly transformational. Think back just to a decade ago when the US was import-dependent, geopolitically vulnerable, bleeding money to foreign producers. Our oil production had bottomed out after a long decline from a 1970 peak. Contrast that with today. The US is again the world's leading producer. Production and reserves are at record levels, and that's true for both oil and gas. And our progress is accelerating. This is the remarkable thing. The Eagle Ford in South Texas is going great. Bakken in North Dakota is doing tremendously well, and the Permian in West Texas, as we heard, is king of them all. Now, ConocoPhillips, we have a key position in each of these big three plays. The Marcellus Shale in the northeast has become the largest US gas-producing field, and parts of it haven't even been drilled yet. Development in other shale basins is proceeding as well. So the US is exporting both oil and gas, and incredibly about to become a net exporter. Now, a big step was government's repeal of the export ban, the oil export ban, in 2015. And at the time, our rising US light oil production was overwhelming domestic refineries. And so light oil still sold at a large discount. At times, differentials between Brent and West Texas Intermediate prices were over $25 a barrel. And sometimes light oil wouldn't even sell at all. Now, with exports, differentials today are below $10 a barrel, and they can close even further with the right infrastructure investments. The US trade balance has benefited by tens of billions of dollars. Many thousands of good-paying jobs have been created. And as we heard, US allies and consuming nations have eased their dependence on uncertain and hostile sources. Meanwhile, the industry is still advancing. We're applying world-class computing power and data analytics to every aspect of operations. It's very cool what is going on in our industry right now. We're utilizing artificial intelligence, machine learning, and autonomous control technology. So if you think about self-driving cars, we are on the very threshold of self-drilling rigs. It's very exciting. I'm a drilling engineer by discipline, and it is absolutely fascinating what's going on. So our technological path is onward and upward. But there are some obstacles to making the most of the energy renaissance. We have serious infrastructure constraints. We need more delivery capacity. US liquids volumes increased by 2.2 million barrels a day in just the last 12 months. Absolutely incredible. And we're on track for a similar gain this year. Meanwhile, natural gas production was up nearly 10% last year. EIA expects a similar growth this year. And by year end, US gas production will have more than doubled since bottoming out in 1983. So growing volumes need expanded market access. To accommodate the new production, industry is reversing flow in older pipelines. We're building new lines and doing more shipments by rail. Since we're in Houston, let's look at the Gulf Coast. We need more port capacity here for exports. And government can help by permitting and facilitating dredging, supporting construction of new facilities, and, for example, in support of the expansion plans of the Port of Crystal. US crude exports have essentially doubled in the past 12 months. I was looking at this just the other day. I last looked in the fourth quarter of last year. You look again just recent weeks. Oil exports have exceeded 3 million barrels a day just in recent weeks. Astonishing. And in late 2018, the Gulf Coast passed an historic milestone as it became a net crude exporter. Now, more oil will be coming our way as new pipelines from the Permian and as far north as North Dakota come online. And these new pipelines, as well as port expansion are essential, and they need to happen in a timely manner. Otherwise, we could suffer severe differential oil price blowouts. I used to work in the Canadian oil sands, and it's truly tragic to see what they're suffering right now economically. Tremendous lost value, and we can avoid that here with timely approvals of new infrastructure and port capacity. Meanwhile, we recognize, of course, growing public concern over climate change and environmental protection. As we've heard, natural gas is most certainly part of the solution. The world, in fact, cannot meet its climate targets without gas to displace coal, wood, and biomass in power generation. As you likely know, Using gas instead of coal in power generation cuts carbon dioxide emissions by half. Gas also provides flexible backup generation, crucial to enable integration of wind and solar into that electricity grid. Now, oil continues to offer unique and remarkable benefits, and we just don't often hear enough about how remarkable oil is, specifically through its energy density and its utility as a transportation fuel, and its use as a feedstock in the growing petrochemicals industry. So there's a vital role for oil and gas, even in 2-degree scenarios in the future. And you can read more about that in our climate risk report that we've provided today. In fact, oil and gas will remain essential elements of the long-term energy mix alongside renewables and nuclear power. But we're mindful of society's desire to address climate risks. Since 2009, our company, we have reduced our annual GHG emissions by almost 7 million tonnes. And last year, we established a voluntary target to further reduce our GHG emissions intensity by 5 to 15% by 2030. We've also joined the Climate Leadership Council. It was founded by business and environmental interests to support a 4-pillar federal carbon dividend plan. It's also known as the Baker-Schultz plan, and I'm sure you're familiar with it. The 4 elements are a gradually increasing carbon fee, a carbon dividend for all Americans, so it's revenue neutral, border carbon adjustments, and regulatory simplification. And we've engaged in climate policy discussions now for more than a decade now. We're also pleased to see realism on the regulatory front. The administration has approved several new pipelines, proposed expanding offshore drilling, and addressed regulatory redundancy and overreach, as Susan talked about. But we need to counter the public perception that all regulation was thrown out. The truth is, oil and gas remain heavily regulated at federal, state, and local levels. We comply with hundreds, maybe thousands, of regulations, guidelines, and executive orders. And ConocoPhillips observes our own stringent practices, as well as international standards, and these often exceed regulatory requirements. That said, we do believe in smart regulation. It protects good operators against substandard ones. It helps provide long-term stability. We believe, too, in constructive collaboration between business and government on regulatory issues. This is critical. That ensures new regulations are well-informed and well-balanced. And looking ahead, we do fear that a wave of new regulation could follow the current administration when it leaves office. Like any industry, we need stability. Our industry invests $200 billion a year in the United States. Our projects may take 10 plus years to pay out. It's hard to make decisions on such long-term investments if rules change with every election. Now, state regulations can also be a concern, and you're probably well aware that Colorado Senate Bill 181 is being rushed through the state legislature with very little stakeholder input. Among its measures, it would grant local control over the siting of energy facilities. And in fact, one county, Adams County, is already enacting a 6-month moratorium on permitting, an immediate example of the uncertainty the passage of this bill would create. It could very well stifle development in one of the nation's most important energy-producing states. Remember that we're all on the same side, the public, government, and industry. We all believe that public health and safety and environmental protection are paramount. We urge balance in state legislative initiatives. Give us the chance to educate members on the implications of their proposals. In conclusion, I'll reiterate a few points. We live in an energy-hungry world, but we're blessed with abundant resource potential. The US production growth and low-cost resource abundance are the envy of the world. Addressing our infrastructure bottlenecks can help make the most of the energy renaissance. Oil and gas will remain in the long-term energy mix, given their unique benefits. And last, there is a key role, for smart, well-informed regulation. The energy renaissance during the last decade has strengthened our country economically and geopolitically. It should be our shared goal as members of the energy industry and of government to work together. That's the best way to sustain the benefits of the renaissance for all Americans. Thank you again for this opportunity. I look forward to hearing Wayne and to addressing any questions. Thank you very much.